Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of
the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome everyone into Garden of Doom, and this week we're welcoming in Constance Victoria Briggs. She is a researcher and author of a couple of books. She has a new one coming up pretty soon. She writes about the moon and space anomalies, UFOs, all sorts of things. She's a researcher, and she's been on lots of shows, but she's been on hiatus for a bit while she's been working on her book, and luckily we've dragged her out of her hiatus and got her on, and we're really excited to talk about all these things. Any longtime listener of the show knows I've been wanting to do a proper show about the moon and all its weirdness, and got close with Ricardo, and then of course I did a more traditional science-based show on the moon, which, you know, if that's what you're interested in, it was probably perfect. And that was for Garden Views, but this is Garden of Doom, and we want the fun stuff. We want the juice. We want all of the more interesting, more alternative things. And I think I have my expert here, so no pressure. So Constance Victoria Briggs, please take a moment. First of all, welcome into the show, and secondly, take a moment to introduce yourself and fix whatever wherever I need correction in my introduction.
Hi there, and thank you, Jeff, for having me on. I really appreciate it. So I am, I am a researcher and author on cosmic mysteries. I am making it my goal to discover how Earth and humanity are connected to the cosmos and all of the mysteries going on out there. I'm researching and trying to figure out if we're connected, have an extraterrestrial connection. I'm sort of also a self-proclaimed galactic historian. I'm keeping track of all of this and, turning this information that I'm learning into books, to kind of let others know, so they have the opportunity to kind of learn for themselves. So I'm disseminating this information, and that's where my interest lies, and that's what I do.
Excellent. Well, we like that too, and we like to provide a platform for people to disseminate. So let the dissemination begin. And I love everything about the alien origins. Actually, I was on someone else's show yesterday where his topic was aliens, and I took a pretty broad swath at the beginning, and I don't think for a few minutes he knew what I was talking about. I finally stumbled onto the word Zeus, and like he realized then I was talking about Greek mythology. And he's like, what does this have to do with aliens? I'm like, well, just wait. I mean, what doesn't it have to do with aliens? If you listen to the mythology origin story of almost any people on Earth, and you just want to replace gods, demons, angels, with the word aliens, which really makes more sense, or you don't even have to choose. I mean, I think by their very definition, anything divine is extraterrestrial. I mean, it's not of this Earth. It created the Earth. So either way, I mean, you can keep whatever religious beliefs you have absolutely 100% intact, and then you still absolutely believe in something extraterrestrial. That's for sure. Anyway, enough about me. I'm sure I'll still slither into the show from time to time. But let's. I don't know where you want us on the start of. Obviously, maybe your sort of big picture thesis, and then we can sort of dial in on a few things. Hopefully, starting.
All right. Okay, guys. So I have written a couple of books on the moon, and I'll just go from there. So the first one, I'll tell you how I started with the moon subject. I wrote a book entitled The Encyclopedia of Moon Mysteries. Now, the way that I came to get into that whole authoring that book is because I'm a researcher in metaphysics, and when have your hand in metaphysical topics, and you're doing research, because I've written other books on angels, on God, on the unseen world. Well, what happens is you get a lot of interesting information coming past your desk, And even though at that time I always knew we weren't alone in the universe, I knew the UFOs were out there. I wasn't even so fascinated with the idea of UFOs as much as trying to find out who's behind the UFOs. And anyway, so I was looking into that. Who's behind them? I was looking for the benevolent extraterrestrials. And the information coming across my desk, some of it had to do with the moon. And it was, I was like, okay, this is interesting. And at first, I said, I haven't thought much about the moon. Like most people, I thought, the moon was just a dead rock in the sky with nothing going on. But as these stories kept coming across in my research, I was like, wow, there's really something here. And in the process of all this, I came across a little book written by a ufologist by the name of Don Wilson. He wrote a book titled Our Mysterious Spaceship Moon. And at that point, I had seen so many little tidbits here about the moon going, across this information. I said, you know what, I'm just going to see what he has to say. And I tell you, that little book really opened up a whole new world for me, and even changed the way I look at the sky and the moon. Even though I always believed there were extraterrestrials out there, this was a whole new thing. Because like most people, I thought the moon was a dead rock with just nothing going on, and it turns out that there's a lot going on. Okay, so I put this book together, and I tried to make it simple for people so that they didn't have to do all of the same research I did on it. So I talked about the moon anomalies. I talked about structures on the moon, and we'll get into all of that. I talked about who might be up there. So what I learned about the moon and where I will start is the fact that no, it's not just this big dead thing in the sky with nothing happening. There may be someone up there. I think there are. But they may come and go. They may not be there now. I don't know. But if you look back into our history about the moon, it gets really interesting and really fascinating very fast. So I usually start with telling people the moon is the scientists do not know how our moon was created. I grew up thinking the scientists knew everything. They knew how we were made. They knew how the moon was made. I grew up very religious, or at least in my late 20s, I became religious, and I thought that I had it all. Apparently, according to history, there was a time when there was no moon in the sky. Now, people always say, how can that be possible? The Earth can't hold life without there being moon in the sky. Well, apparently that's not true. I mean, I always say, Mars has these tiny little moons. It's not moving all over the place, and the Earth wasn't necessarily spinning around and, dipping and turning either. It needed help for life to thrive. But apparently there was life here. And so it looks like, according to what I'm thinking, someone brought this thing in here. And that's why Don Wilson had titled the book Our Mysterious Spaceship Moon. Because if you go to the NASA website right now, with all of the theories they've had of how the moon came to be, they have nothing up there that's definitive. There have been 5 theories. I grew up thinking the main one was the capture theory, that it was captured within Earth's gravity, and it clearly isn't, because it's too big. So they discounted that, and then they brought in the big whack theory. The fact they said that the Earth was hit by a planet the size of Mars named Theia, and that the material from the Earth went spewing out into the universe when that happened and formed the moon. Well, NASA says they think that's, we also call it the giant impact theory. NASA says on their website, well, we think that's how it happened, or words to that effect. They don't have anything definitive up there. So if you go back in history, you have these philosophers and Greek writers and philosophers from ancient times that actually in their writings they allude to there being a time when there was no moon. There are several of them. One of them gives, and forgive me, there's so many of them, I don't always get the names clear in my head, but I believe it was Ovid who said that there was a time where there was no moon in the sky, and that there were the brightest object in the sky was Venus, and that there were people that lived on the Earth before the moon. They had recorded in their history, and the names of these people were the Arcadians. And it says that the Arcadians were running wild in the Earth. They didn't wear clothing. They didn't have agriculture. They didn't do anything sophisticated, but they were running wild, and that was even before the time of Jupiter, the belief in Jupiter, which is, goes way back to the beginning of history. So they said that, and there's if you go to the book, there's 5 of them listed, including Aristotle, and so they talked about this time, and I thought that, that's really fascinating, because following that, there is also this story out of South Africa. And Jeff, I don't know if you've heard this basic information or not, but there is a story out of South Africa from the Zulu people who said that in their belief system, the moon was sent across the universe. They said that the moon was hollowed out by these extraterrestrial beings. They did not use the word extraterrestrials, but they did say, they are sort of a reptilian kind of look. They had scales and stuff, and they sent this thing across the universe, and that's how the moon came to be here. Now, this is an old story and a tradition that's been handed down, but it was interesting because that is the same thing that Don Wilson was alluding to. Now, where did Don Wilson get his information? So Don Wilson had started the research with looking at the Apollo astronauts, and he was commenting on a couple of scientists from out of Russia that was working for the Soviet Union, who they had all looked at this research from the astronauts, and they were saying, okay, well, it looks like this is really strange. And I just wanted to say that these two scientists put their reputations on the line when they came forward with their theory as to what the moon is. And it lines up so interestingly with the Zulu people that it just blows my mind. Anyway, so these guys were saying that basically the moon they were saying it's hollow. They looked at the Apollo astronauts' information, and I know there's people who don't believe that, we went to the moon, but I do, so I go there. They're saying that that the moon is hollow because we know the old story of when the astronauts sent the lunar module, crashed it into the the moon a couple of times and it rang like a bell. And also, I would like to just say that NASA scientists came forward with a press conference. If this is not like fiction, they did at that time come forward and said, gosh, the moon, reverberated for, this amount of time, and we don't understand why. It looks like it's hollow. Well, that's really weird. We don't want to elaborate on it, but that's what it looks like. That's what they were saying at a press conference. So
yeah, I don't want to interject, but they've recently there's a theory put forward to explain it, and now they're saying that it's not hollow, that it's like sort of like lattice inside, almost like the in between the hulls of submarines, or that there's a thick layer of sort of basically lattice work, sort of so there is this hollow. To try to explain that strange resonance that you said that is undisputable. Basically, I'm not going to say it rings like a bell. I don't know what the sound is, but there's a vibration to it. Everything that you've mentioned, I've heard bits and pieces or the entirety of, except for the Zulu part. But I knew that there was a Zulu in the Zulu origin myth, that they also were visited by a star people. And I knew that it was similar, but not the same as the Dogon. At some point, I knew them both. As a matter of fact, I think episode 52 or so, I had someone from South Africa who, and discussed both. So there's probably a show where if people heard it, I'll be like, well, Jeff, you talked about it. Someone told you about it. I fully believe you. I've just forgotten it since, because that's the nice thing about doing a show or having books and things like that. You don't need to remember everything. You can go back to your reference materials. But yeah, all this is like, I don't think Jeff the podcaster confirming everything you said counts for all that. But since it is my show, I guess it counts for something. But yeah, I've heard almost all of this. And maybe this one other piece, maybe you're going to get to it or not, but I had heard, I had seen that theory bandied about as well, sort of the, almost like the, I can't remember, it's the wood, I think it's woodpeckers, like the woodpecker skull theory of the moon. It's got this like bracing, I keep saying lattice work, almost like honeycomb's the wrong word, but anyway, I think people understand where you sort of have like X bars holding layers together.
Right. Well, that's what the scientists, deduced from and they said that, they also looked at the craters, the fact that the craters are shallow, and the fact that the moon is made of all of these elements. That if they were going to build a ship, it's made up of these materials, that they would have done so, and it looked to them like it was created to be sent across the universe. They said that, but for me, it, could have been a wormhole. That's something I'm covering in my books, other book tunnels and things. But in place here, the question would be, if our moon is not natural, and more and more people are coming forward and saying, yeah, it doesn't look like it's natural, it's some kind of mega structure, then where did it come from, and who's up there? So I guess that the question is, well, if this thing is up there, who sent it here? Well, the theory is that it could be many theories. It could be a duck blind with extraterrestrials in it, making it look like a moon, so they're watching planet Earth. There's theories that this thing is the extraterrestrials are taking notes and sending them back out to the universe about what's going on here and in other places of the solar system. But I think that one of the most interesting theories, of course, is that there's someone in the moon, living in the moon and on the moon. And, who are they? Because the moon has since the creation of the telescope, we have been seeing anomalous lights up there. The first astronomers were seeing lights moving across the surface of the moon, over the moon, in craters of the moon, in all different colors, sizes, geometric shapes. Even during the lunar eclipse, the early astronomers were saying, we're seeing some kind of stars, which were lights, around the moon. So who's doing that? So along with that, we have the strangeness. I mean, there was one astronomer that talked about seeing what looked like some kind of insect or animal moving across the surface of the moon. And this went on for about 8 days, and he was timing it. And so our astronomers in the modern era came along and said, our scientists said, you know what? Yeah, those guys were wrong. We know that the early astronomers said that it was scientific fact that there was someone on the moon, but then nobody can be up there. Nobody can live up there. But then they never explained where all the strange lights were coming from, where all the activity was coming from that they were seeing up there. What was going on? They just wrote it off, or we thought they wrote it off. Because when we get closer to the 1940s, through the 1940s to the 60s, especially the 60s, you know, they were not talking about it publicly, but they were following things going on with the moon. I know because NASA came out and declassified a document called the NASA Lunar Technical Report, where they had laid out since the 1600s what all of these astronomers had been seeing, and all of the movement, and all of they even put down the time. Okay, this astronomer viewed squared lights, for example, that were red over this crater for 2 hours. So they laid all of this stuff out, which tells us this has always been going on, but they maybe didn't want us to know. I don't know why. So my point is, going from the 1600s up to now, we have always had strange things going on up there. In my book, I talk about people being on the moon because not only do we have the lights, we have instances where, you know, there were blinking lights, like there was like Morse code or something. Who was doing that? It looked like they were giving us signs and signals. So whoever may have come in originally with the moon, it looks like someone was in that moon. And it looks like they either came here to monitor Earth and to help Earth. My theory, of course, is that it was placed here to help Earth's life to thrive. And they stayed, or did they leave the moon and come here? Were they just coming to Earth's vicinity to help life on Earth? Or were they also a race of beings that may have been fleeing, you know, their own system? Who knows? But someone's there. Now, why do I think someone's there? Because we've got those structures on the moon. There are structures all over the moon, Jeff.
Let's talk about those. Let's talk about the structures.
So I'd like to start with the pyramids, for example. Okay, so they have found pyramidal structures on the moon. Now, this information came out in the 60s and the 70s, and for people who weren't around then, they've never seen the newspaper articles or maybe have even heard that, but they're there. And there are pictures from the Apollo missions with pyramids. And what's interesting about those pyramids is that they are found on Earth, as we know, but they've recently been seen on, there's some information about Venus and Mars about seeing pyramids. So you've got the structure that came in history, all right? And you've got the same type of symbol on different areas, it looks like, of our solar system. So have these beings in the moon, did they come to Earth? Did they have some transportation back and forth? Because it's just too similar, you know, to have that symbol. So that's a huge mystery as to who put pyramids on the moon. Was it the people who came in, and why? You know, there's some information from our history that says that on Earth, there was a time that we had aerial technology, you know, way before we created airplanes, and that our ancestors may have been traveling back and forth to the moon and other places of the solar system. But again, getting back, did that technology start with the moon coming in and those beings somehow came here and helped? You know, were they going back and forth? There's also a tale out of Atlantis, more and more people today are believing that Atlantis is real, and that Atlantis, they're just still looking for it, but that Atlantis had this advanced technology, and there are stories, that they could go to there's one tale out there that they could go to the moon, and that the moon may have been a part of their territory. So my point is, we may have an extraterrestrial, ancestral connection to the moon that we never knew about. Now, not only that, but there are structures on the moon that were found early on by Richard Hoagland and Michael Barra that looked like they had been blown apart in some kind of war. There are partial buildings up there. And, the theory is that there may have been some kind of galactic or war. Maybe it involved the moon, Mars, and Earth. For those structures to be there, it looks like, maybe we were either fighting each other. Maybe there was a territory on the moon, once that moon came in, and there may have been beings that came here and back and forth. Maybe it was someone's territory. Maybe they were fighting over that territory. And the same with Mars, because Mars's atmosphere is looking like, it could have been involved in some sort of warfare. The surface of Mars is said to have one time been filled with life, and it looks like maybe a war took it out, and that's why they're not there, and that maybe those beings came to Earth. So the Earth, Mars, and the moon, were they fighting each other, or were they fighting an unknown foe? Because on Earth, we also have nuclear areas that look like they were bombed with nuclear blasts. And so does the moon. The moon has craters up there that are not natural craters. They look like, they're craters that were created by explosions.
What places on the Earth are you talking about?
So there are some areas in the jungle south of the Amazon that they went in deep in there, and they found some cities. And it looks like they had been blown apart. It looks like they have I don't know what the word is, that glass, that glass type substance.
The tektite, right?
Thank you. That looks like it only comes from explosions. They found skeletons, and they deduced that this looks like it was an area that was, blasted by, some kind of explosion. And, then we have the Hindu writings that talked about a great war. And they go into great detail about their atomic weaponry. Right. So apparently in the ancient past, something did happen. And it looks like the beings on the moon and us on Earth and maybe even Mars all had something going on. So that's one thing, that's one strange area with the moon, is that they have those structures that look like they were blown apart. But on the other hand, and this is where it gets a little bit more weirder, I guess, is that there are also complete structures, whole structures. There are some astronomers, amateur astronomers, and when I say amateur, I mean they know their stuff, but they're not making a living at it, and they're putting this stuff up on YouTube. And there are some people who have been looking, on Google Earth, and they're seeing structures that are whole and that are complete, and they're talking about even the Apollo astronauts talked about there being what looked like glass structures there, roads. The Apollo astronauts talked about roads and tubing and areas that look like it has life. All right, and there's some theory that some of the craters people could be using, extraterrestrials could be using to come in and out of there, because NASA talked about there being bottomless craters. And for the ones that are not bottomless, they talk about there being light sitting in craters, on the edge of craters that some say look like spacecraft and parking lots. So, yeah. So there's someone going up there, whether or not they were connected to this whole historical event that I think happened, that looks like happened, or not, we don't know. I mean, it looks to me especially, with Earth and it could be on the moon, that gosh, civilizations come and go.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't know that it's the same crowd that may have come in with the moon or not. So we've got that. Let's see. We've got
I have a couple questions for you. I know that there's these like basically tunnels that they're calling dried out lava flows, which apparently stay at around 40 degrees Fahrenheit all the time. That when I say they, I mean the collective spacefaring industries and governments of the world, of this world, saying that they could store things there. That's possibly where it could be habitats, if you could seal them off and then oxygenate them. And they're saying that they were lava flows from volcanism. But I am not aware of any other evidence of volcanoes on the moon, dormant or otherwise. And if there is, please correct me, but if there isn't, doesn't that support your theory that someone built these things, bored them with machines? Because if there's no volcanism, if there's no magma core, if there's no molten, or if there's not signs of it, those things wouldn't occur naturally. I mean, I know everyone who's seen, Star Wars or Dune can think of giant worm creatures doing it, but I think we would have found the giant worm creatures by now, or they would have found us. So those I'll just call them lava flows or they could be, intelligently made. I won't say man-made, because I don't know that we can say man-made, but I don't know if it's happy or sad, the discoveries that you've made and you're sharing with us. Because if those folks had a hand in creating us, obviously we got their bad habits about warfare. But if they didn't, and it's a completely different race, they're just luxurious. Apparently, this is a bad habit that's more than just one species wide. To the warfare. In movies and whatever, we imagine aliens of all shapes and sizes, and some were at war, some were more peaceful. But I think the hope is that when they when they emerge themselves, that's the wrong word, but when they make themselves known, that they're going to be so much wiser than us, because they'll be so much more advanced, that they'll be beyond war, beyond, things like, their levels of diplomacy and behavior will be, so advanced that it can only help us. And, if they've been blowing themselves up on the moon and Mars and Venus and possibly beyond, I don't know. It's not exactly hopeful.
It's not, and it's kind of depressing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So my son told me the other day. Oh gosh, I can't remember exactly what we were talking about, but something along these lines. I was asking him about Star Wars because I'm researching a new book on our Earth's extraterrestrial connection, and this whole thing about warfare came up, and he says, I don't want to live in a universe like that, because I said, it's kind of like Star Wars, I think. Tell me about Star Wars. And what did they do again in Star Wars? And tell me about it. And he was explaining, I don't want to live in a universe like that. So this is what I think. Unfortunately, it looks like there are the good and the bad. All right. We have the good and the bad here on Earth. And even though I thought I learned early on that the universe is mostly a benevolent place full of benevolent beings, it looks like there are some really, some beings out there that are not. And it's beginning to look more and more like, there may be some people interested out there and who would like Earth. But we're also said to be protected. I believe we are protected. Now, you just brought up a whole bunch of stuff in it, so many different topics. I believe we're protected, and I'll just try to hit some, because we've got reports of nuclear weaponry being disarmed by extraterrestrials. I'm going to put some of that in my book. Whether or not they're on the moon, or they're, question is, how are they getting here? Where are they coming from? We've seen ships leaving the moon. There's video of fleets of ships leaving the moon. I mean, that's stuff that's out there. are they coming from there or elsewhere? But it looks like we do have some interest in maintaining a peaceful world. There are reports of us having been saved by asteroids, that just missed Earth, that looks like they were pushed out of the way. There are reports on Earth from people who say they were saved in disasters by beings that showed up. I always thought they were angels. All right. And I'm still not opposed to it. I love angels, the idea of angels. But sometimes I believe that, there are ETs coming that are around us. I believe they're here and that they are here working to help us. I've heard stories where extraterrestrials have actually come in and maybe secretly working with the government in science and when we get some kind of new medicines, that it's come from them. These are all rumor, but it looks like there are benevolent beings out there who are on our side. And this is what's really interesting. And yeah, the moon falls into this category. It is beginning to appear that there is a hierarchy in the galaxy. I've been hearing for many years about there being an authority that, just like on Earth, we have the governments to report to, that there's someone out there that the different worlds, we have a galactic community that the different worlds have to report to. So why do they have to report if everyone's good?
Mm-hmm.
Also, there is a story where the scientists are saying that they've been seeing these explosions way out in deep space, and they can't place them. They were saying it almost looks like there's someone at war out there. That's what they said. So yeah, that tells me. I mean, I just want to say that we're trying to grow and learn here about all of this. That's why I do this. Just trying to look at everything going on, put the pieces together, and trying to understand what is happening. It's not because, I'm saying that this is right or that's right. I think that all of us should be having roundtable discussions. So what's going on way out there? If that maybe is a war, yeah, they're both good and bad. We've had some problems on Earth with malevolent beings and the whole, taking animal mutilations and all of that. I didn't want to look at that stuff for many, many years. I just didn't want to know about it. But, that is a thing, and it is. I don't think it's going on now. I don't know. But it was. What was the purpose? Were these, these the bad guys? They didn't touch humans. As far as that.
What is the purpose of cattle mutilations and the ties to? I mean, if you are an alien, why are you taking out the organs of cows, killing them, and exsanguinating them? Are you cow vampires or something? You think the aliens? I can get, I guess, from a human-centric, egotistical point of view, I could get if they did the same thing to humans for dissections or whatever, but why cows? I mean, wouldn't one cow pretty much tell you all you need to know about pretty much all the cows?
Maybe they're doing something else with the organs, Jeff. I mean, there's this one race that's, got a whole bunch of, from what I understand, genetic testing going on and trying to figure out how to save themselves and all of this.
Do you think that, how we use pig organs, they're compatible with humans? Do you think maybe cow organs might be compatible with one of these races out there? I mean, that makes more sense than just liking to kill and excavate cows for fun.
Right. I don't know.
I just came up with it. I've given that no thought before.
They're not touching humans. They're not doing that to humans. Why not?
Right. It's so weird.
Why not? No, there may be
not
some
goats, not dogs, not deer, not horses, just cows.
Yeah, it's not funny. Actually, I should stop. But
I mean, in the 1800s, I could see like rival ranchers doing that to each other to scare them, or if it was before that, maybe if you were a Native American First Nations tribe, you want to stop the encroachment, you want them to think that there's boogeymen in the forest or whatever. I get, but I just don't know why aliens would want to do it. It doesn't seem like a scarecrow effect. I mean, even Vlad Tepes knew to put the heads of humans on pikes.
Right. When they're taking the organs from these animals, they're using some sort of tools that they're making perfect incisions that cannot be explained the way that they're removing it. It's not, I didn't mean for us to get into this topic, all graphic, but they're not just cut up. They are surgically removed in very clean ways. It's very, very strange. And you're right. But the point is they're not doing it. They're not specifically doing that to humans. Either they're not interested or there's some protection. I don't know. That's just my speculation.
Oh, maybe humans are off limits.
Right.
I want to, before I forget, and while I have you, I want to get on some things that are just as fantastic, but not as fantastical. Because whether you believe anything that we talked about the moon so far, there are some objectively odd, literal use of the word astronomical coincidences or facts about the size and location of the moon vis-a-vis Earth. So it's like exactly some proportion. It's exactly the right distance that it creates a complete eclipse of the sun. It's something, there's like some sort of there's like a rule of 4 that it's like 1/4 the size of the Earth. It's exactly 400 times further from the sun than it is from the Earth. Like all sorts of weird mathematical specifics, things that granted, astronomical, it is in the cosmos, so, maybe it's not so, wild and wacky, but it does seem unique, and it's like in the exact place to stabilize the wobble of our orbit, and our tilt, and thus the tides, which is essential for the level of life that we have. Not for life generally. I'm sure there's plenty of life that could live in a rougher, oceans and then whatnot, and even on the land, but not us, not most of the fauna that we're aware of. But I'm sure can you go over some of the details of that and put it in a way that like someone else can make sense? Because I know what I'm trying to say. I just don't know if I have the numbers or ratios correct.
Well, I'm not very good with the numbers either. Remember those numbers either, but I will tell you what I think is going on with it, if that helps.
Yes,
all right. So, basically this is a huge anomaly. It shouldn't have happened. The moon shouldn't be there. All right. And it is, just amazing that it is able to provide this eclipse the way that you're saying. I can't describe it scientifically either.
And having one moon is sort of interesting in and of itself. Most planets have lots of moons, and even Mars, which has 2 moons, they're really more like big asteroids and not circular at all. Like they're like 2 potatoes.
So basically it looks like, obviously Earth is a very special place. Earth has a fantastic amount of life here. There is I think, it could have been terraformed. I think life was brought in here. And I think that the moon was brought across the universe and placed here so that life could thrive even more to a large degree, which it did. And then I think, civilizations came in from extraterrestrials. But that perfect moon was designed for that purpose, for more life. But it's also something else. I think that the creators or the extraterrestrials who started all of this, and I don't mean like God, I call them creators. I use that word loosely, but I believe they were extraterrestrials who started all of this going on. I believe that moon was placed there like that because they knew we were going to wake up one day. It took us a lot of time to get from the beginning to where we are now questioning this stuff. And I believe that the moon being placed like that is a sign. They knew that we were going to figure this all out mathematically and say, hey, that shouldn't be there. That shouldn't be like that. We're going to make it so that they know that they're not alone in the universe, that this is by intelligent design, that there are intelligent beings out there. They're way more advanced than us, but that we're not alone. I think it's something for us to read and to see and to understand. I think it's a sign, one of the many astronomical signs for us. I'm actually writing a chapter on astronomical signs that we can see to help figure out. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like a 2001 Odyssey. which I haven't seen many, many, many years. There was a sign on there, right? The pyramid kind of thing.
The monolith.
For us to wake up and say, hey, how'd that get there? That shouldn't be like that. What's going on? Who are we? Where are we? Where did we come from? What are we here for? I think the moon being placed and being able to have an eclipse, it looks like a sign for us.
Even the moon's orbit, like most my understanding again is might be incomplete and might be incorrect, but my understanding is that moons typically orbit around the planets elliptically, like we orbit around the sun, like planets orbit around the sun, and apparently like the entire cosmos orbits around larger bodies. But our moon, it doesn't orbit in an ellipse. It's a perfect circle, which is sort of why you can have the perfectly predictable phases of the moon and all of that. And people have been keeping time by the phases of the moon, forever, basically, breaking your weeks into sevens because of the phases of the moon, and breaking your months into basically, 28 and change days, because of the phases of the moon. And it's because it's almost like a perfectly circular orbit, which is, again, as far as I know, fairly unusual, if not unique in, I'm not going to say the universe, but in our solar system. Agreed.
It's strange. People think that, there's something going on the other side on the far side of the moon, so that we can't see them watching us. And that's why it's that way. I don't really know why they would have done it that way. That's one of the great mysteries, but perhaps they don't want to be noticed because we can't monitor that as closely. We seem to be a species that, for whatever reason, is being kept in the dark about so many things. Maybe they were waiting for the extraterrestrials were waiting for us to grow in advance before they make themselves known. Maybe that's why they don't want us to see what's going on that other side. There's a story from the Apollo missions where one of the missions, the first time they orbited the moon, they went to the back. On the front, it was normal. They were in in contact with mission control. But once they hit the backside, and that happened, that was about an hour, they were out of touch. But when they got back there, they were hearing strange sounds. It's been reported that, it was music. It wasn't music that they were hearing. That's what they said. Oh, they're hearing space music. But the crew were saying, do you guys hear this noise? What is that? It's going woo, woo. I mean, literally in the transcripts, it's going woo, woo. What is that? Should we even tell them that we heard stuff while we were back here? There's something going on. And maybe we're not supposed to know yet. Maybe there's a reason we're in the dark, So clearly, this hierarchy I'm talking about, we've heard of what is a Galactic Federation of worlds. That's coming out more and more. Maybe that is a thing. Maybe they are keeping us in the dark. Maybe the moon is that way for a reason.
I really want to talk about that in just a second, but this week, and this is probably going to seem like it's completely unrelated for the first 20 seconds or so, but this week, they used AI, archaeologists, I presume, or linguists, with, I think, Babylonian cuneiform, or maybe Akkadian. I think it was Akkadian, and nobody's been able to translate. They haven't been able to translate. It's like 5,000 years old, or maybe 5,000 BC, which is 7,000 years old, whatever it is. And AI translated it within seconds. Now, I don't know if the translation is correct. I don't know if anyone's double checked it. I don't know if it's been double checked in AI. But the point is, let's just assume that the AI got it somewhat right, and they were able to translate what we could not translate because the computer can see, patterns in so many different ways. If they got their hands on that recording, they being the AI, maybe they could translate what that signal and what that message is, and sort of reverse deduce a language, hopefully that's close. And we might be on the precipice being able to initiate first contact, or maybe extend our, maybe that was first contact. Maybe that was the hand. We just didn't understand it. And, if you're an optimist, I guess if you're a pessimist, maybe you're saying, don't look into the hornet's nest. It never worked out for Winnie the Pooh. So I'm not really sure, but do you have any thoughts on that? And then I want to get back into this Galactic Federation, because so many people speak with authority on, like, they know what all these different races of aliens are, what they look like, what their different names are, who works for who's the subordinates, who's in charge. And I would like to know what kind of research or what your findings have been to either support that or dispute it, or what is we'll just say galactic status, with the full understanding that even if it is a galactic federation or a multi-star system federation, we have no idea how far it extends and how many, the universe is infinite, basically. So, it could be, we might think it's gigantic, but it might be small beans, compared to others somewhere out there.
So what is the first question?
The AI translation of the moon song, or the space song of the astronauts.
Okay. So, yeah, I don't know. That would be one thing to do if I were in the space agency, is to give that a go. That would be great. Don't know if they'll do it. If they did it, don't know if they tell us. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're telling us much, to be honest. They're still signing non-disclosure agreements. We got more information out of the 60s than we do today.
Mm-hmm.
That's that lunar report I talked about. All right. But that would be great if they would do it. But, I have to I don't mean to put a burst your bubble, but there are other, true stories that happened with the astronauts. There were a couple of them that, on different occasions heard foreign language, and alien language.
This is giving me a whole bubble.
Yeah, it wasn't first contact, because it's happened in various forms. All right. There were two other, astronauts that talked about, hearing, one of them was during, I think it was Gordon Cooper. I can't remember all their names, but hearing a language during a mission, and that was right here, in Earth. He wasn't on the moon or anything. He was here, and he got this. He saw this UFO, and he also heard alien language that he'd never heard before. So they have that transcript. I don't know if they're going to use an AI to try to decipher it. I doubt it. They even know where it is. They were pretty disorganized way back then, I'll be honest. But yeah, that is a thing. And then there was another one that heard it, and they brought the transcript back when they were, it was a moon mission, when they were coming back, and they don't know what it was saying either. So where is it? Why don't they use an AI to translate it? That would be really cool if they could. Let's hope that they do. With all the, where information is trickling out a little more than it used to now. And so maybe eventually we will, get some information out of them. Or maybe if they change the authority, I don't know. But yeah, that would be good if they would try AI on all of those situations. As far as first contact goes, I think we've had first contact. Personally, I've moved beyond it. We have so much information out there about, our extraterrestrial past goes back to the beginning of our history, where there were, reports of people getting on ships and riding away. Like, you hear reports of contactees and experiencers. I've got a story in my book where one guy was invited on board of a spaceship and taken. If you're going to look at religion, Enoch, out of the Hebrew scriptures, was taken on a huge trip.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So it's not this isn't our first rodeo. What's happening now? This has been going on forever, and people don't understand it or know it. That, we're not just beginning to see UFOs in the sky. They've always been around. Who are they? Why are they here? That's the question. And they're upping their game. We're seeing more and more of them all the time. What's going on? Are they about to? So when we think of first contact, I think we've had it. But okay, so let's say first contact is when they land on Earth and you see all the ships in the sky at once, or, the masses. I guess first contact would be when the masses learn and see an extraterrestrial in front of the cameras. The reason they haven't done that is the mystery, but maybe they're about to tell us.
Okay, so the Galactic Federation, I have heard people use names to identify races. I mean, of course we've heard Greys. I've heard the tall Greys, the short Greys. I've heard the Nordics, Valiant Thor being, named as by name. A lot of people talk about Toth, the Atlantean, as having been possibly alien. I've heard Polarians, which is also one of the root races in Hermetic traditions. I've heard the Arcadians, which you just explained is consistent with another star. I think it was related to the Zulus. Perhaps I'm conflating them already. See, I forget things quickly.
Yeah.
But all sorts of all sorts of names. Reptilians. The Dogon had sort of like the dolphin people, which I find interesting because there was sort of in, I think, against Sumeria or Babylon, there's Dagon, who was basically a merman, sort of a dolphin man, with a Sumerian or Babylonian cap on his head. And just, we have the Sirius people, from the Dogon tribe from Sirius C. Nobody knew there was a Sirius C until a few years, by a few years, it could have been within the last few decades, but, certainly nobody was supposed to be able to see it with the naked eye. So what are the different types of aliens that you have? I'm going to use the word documented loosely because I don't know, what level of documentation you have, but that you've encountered on your in your research, and do they have names and descriptions, and can you sort of tell what the governance, or what is how do they rule or govern in this Galactic Federation, to use your term?
So basically, all of the ones, I'm just amazed you've got just a wealth of information there. All of the ones that you have named, of course, are the most well-known ones, and that that you're right in all of that. Those are true stories. But I'll just start, I guess, answering with the Galactic Federation. Let me just start there.
Yeah.
So I have my little Galactic Federation story that's kind of interesting, kind of funny. I have been hearing about the Galactic Federation for about 30 years now. Didn't have much information. We can only glean what we get here from researchers and experiencers and contactees and trying to put it together. But I knew they were out there. All right. Those are the ones that I had been originally looking for, the benevolent beings. All right. So basically, the Galactic Federation, and oh God, I'll start with Gene Roddenberry. Gene Roddenberry was my first key to there being something different. I don't know if you know his story. I guess you do. You're so knowledgeable. So anyway.
I'll say yes, but let's pretend the audience doesn't.
Okay. So Gene Roddenberry was sitting in on, and he and some other people were sitting in on some channeling sessions by a woman. Well, there's one woman, and there was another man. I've heard two different names. But anyway, he sat in on these sessions where these group of beings were using telepathy to convey information to Earth in an effort to try to help us, do better. And he said that the beings said they were a group that were on a spaceship in Earth's vicinity. And this is not a quote. This is, my paraphrasing. But in Earth's vicinity, and they were from different worlds. And they traveled throughout the universe. And they said they were here to help. So, it is thought, although I don't know if Roddenberry ever said this directly, but it's thought that his inspiration for Star Trek was based on those channeling sessions. And so he, talked about a federation of planets in that show. I have come across some various information over the years that talked about a galactic federation. So I believe, giving those two sources, I think there's a thing. And looking at the fact that, like I said, we've had some protection I believe we're being protected from being taken over by this Federation, from humans being hurt by this Federation. And they seem to have some sort of authority and some sort of prime directive in place. You know, I was listening to Dolores Cannon. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She was a very famous hypnotist who would put people under, and they would what is the word, transgression? Yeah, she would send them back into past lives and things. And they talked about space and being on ships. And she said, the Star Trek was true. And so I think that there is a federation based on these bits and pieces of what we have, but especially on Gene Roddenberry's testimony, that we're being protected. Now, there are worlds that are part of it. Who are they? I hear that the Pleiadians are. I hear that the Arcturians are. The Andromedans are. Did I say Syrians? But it's not everyone, obviously. The Reptilians, who apparently are real, which I have not wanted to look at for many, many years or think about. Apparently they are out there and they are bad, is my information I've come across, but we have protection. And the reason we have protection is because, one, we are a new species. We're still babies compared to these beings out there with these, what we could refer to as, in a fun way, as having these starships and traveling the galaxy. They're millennia ahead of us with their technology. Sure. So, of course, when they see a new species or they plant a new species on a planet, they're going to help. They're going to maybe stand back and watch us grow and mature before they come forward and make themselves known. I know that on Star Trek they wait until people have the warp drive capability. I don't know if that's what they're doing, because they're showing up all the time now, and I'm thinking maybe they're going to do something eventually. I don't know if it'll be in our lifetime, but so yeah, I think there's a Galactic Federation. I think we're under their protection, and I think that they are disappointed. From what I hear that, we are a warring race of beings and we are destroying the earth. There are the stories that they have visited the governments and said, you've got to knock it off. We're not going to, let you destroy all of this life on this planet. And also these nuclear weapons that are coming from Earth are affecting other parts of the galaxy. So I believe they're real, and I think that's a thing. But what my funny story was, is we had the news on. We're a family of four. I have two young adults and my husband, and we were meandering about doing dinner one night and a couple of years ago. And I heard the word Galactic Federation come off of the mainstream news. And I spun around and my mouth was wide open. I was like, oh my God, what are they talking about? Well, they were talking about that author who had, the Israeli author who had written a book. He was an older gentleman and he had a resume the length of our arms of all the wonderful things he'd done with his career. And he said he was old and he could write this book and he can say that there is a Galactic Federation out there. And I was like, oh my God, they just outed the Galactic Federation. Yeah, that's what he said. Use that terminology.
I remember who you're. I wish I could remember the name, but yeah, he was in the Secret Service, the Israeli Secret, something like that, or in the Defense Ministry.
Yeah, Eshed Hamid or something like that. Yeah, so that was something.
Can I ask you a dopey question about the Galactic Federation? I mean, all of the names of these are all words we know. Are we using words like Andromeda that we've used, Andromedans or Pleiadians, or did they give us those words and that's where our terminology came from?
I think it's our terminology.
Okay, it's just our terminology. So they don't call themselves the Andromedans. They might call themselves the Chattahoocheans, for all I know.
Right. Now, maybe like with the Dogon, for example. Maybe Doggin said Doggin. I don't know.
Right. Or
But
as
yeah, I
Monty
think
Python would say, some call me Tim.
right. I mean, if you're talking about Andromeda and they're from Andromeda, then you say the Andromedas. That's what we do.
Right.
All
Okay,
right.
that's fine.
But
It's acronyms. We're creating the words. That's all right.
I have to share with you this interesting story. There is a Andromedan ambassador on Earth, and Alex Collier. If you've never listened to him, some of his old videos where he was talking, this guy didn't make this stuff up, And one of the interesting things is that the Andromedans told him, that if, humanity doesn't mature and straighten up, then, they may have to do something about it because we're causing problems on this planet. Just like when the Federation people sent people to talk to the president, the Andromedas, according to Alex, this may have been, well, I don't know the date, but anyway, they said they're going to have to do something if we don't straighten up because they can't allow us, doing what we're doing with nuclear warfare and stuff on the planet.
So are you saying that the Valiant Thor Eisenhower administration event did happen, that meeting?
Yeah, I think it did.
Okay. Let's spitball some, or quick fire some events and tell me if they happen. So the big one is Roswell.
Yeah, I think Roswell did happen.
How about Antarctica?
Antarctica. What's going on with Antarctica? Now that's fairly new. What's going on, right? But you know what? We are seeing all of those interesting pyramids and artifacts being opened up. Do I think something's going on up there? Yep. It's just there's more information coming out of there than I feel like sometimes that on the moon. Yeah, I think someone's up there. I think that there are extraterrestrial scientists working up there, and I do think they have. This is just my opinion. Facilities. I think that those rumors are true too.
Well, they have. When I say they, I loosely, I'll just say science writ large. But they apparently found something that seems like a structure with a hatch under the ice in Antarctica. Obviously, it's beyond Herculean to get there and get to it, but it seemed metallic.
Yeah, like the moon.
Oh yeah, that's what you say. Because apparently, we didn't get much further than you probably know this better than I did. But the number 18 inches comes to mind, that we've never gotten further than 18 inches into the moon's surface, and then whatever we hit was too hard to get through.
It was too hard to get through. They tried to drill.
Yeah.
Tried to drill, and they couldn't drill. Yeah, there's something in there. And let me just share with you one of my favorite quotes, if I may. Sure. It's a kind of a long quote, but if you don't mind.
No,
I just love the Russian scientists that they came forward with this. And they said, we think this thing is a spaceship. So basically, I'm quoting them directly. It says, it is more likely, when it comes to the moon, it is more likely that what we have here is a very ancient spaceship, the interior of which was filled with fuel for the engines, materials and appliances for repair work, navigation instruments, observation equipment, and all manner of machinery. In other words, everything necessary to enable it to serve as a Noah's Ark of intelligence, perhaps even as a home of a whole civilization, with the idea of a prolonged, perhaps thousands of millions of years existence and long wanderings through space. And the reason I'm reading that quote is because you reminded me of the question I once had is, if it's metallic, what the heck were they protecting? Here you go. They more than likely were protecting all of these things as well as a civilization in there. That's why it's metallic. That's what's going on. And there are caverns that, the moon was still, reverberate, even if it was just, caverns, just someone in there living. And that's what I think is going on. That's why it's metallic. As far as Earth and Antarctica, we have the same kind of things going on, but people don't know it. There are caverns and tunnels within the Earth that people and beings that are living there And it's a thing. It's in the moon. Also, there's some speculation that Mars is moon phobos is this way too. That it is a fake moon and that there are beings inside of it living. So we've got people on Earth working and living, scientists, extraterrestrials, I believe, that are here. I think that the extraterrestrials are all over the place and that we are being, for whatever reason, like I said, kept in the dark until we're ready on a mass scale to learn, and that we're being educated slowly, like people like you who have the podcast talking about them through social media. There's more and more people talking about the stuff. And I think that it started way back in the 60s with some sort of plan from the extraterrestrials on how to reach us. Well, hey, what's the best way to reach us except for entertainment, such as science fiction? A lot of what we see in science fiction has come true. A lot of what we see, I really believe, are things that are going on. And, we are being, shown this stuff because we need to open up to our future with extraterrestrial and also our future with space travel if they let us out, because right now they're not so happy with the way we behave and they may not want us out there.
Yeah, so who's in charge, or is it a true democracy, or do you even know?
I don't know. I know it's as far as the Galactic Federation. I don't know if it's a democracy. I don't know yet what's going on. Is it going to require some more digging and research? But I do know that we have the Federation on our side, and there may be other organizations. And who are they reporting to?
Well, sure.
Is that it? Yeah, I don't know.
Right. Who are they reporting to? It's well, that's the whole Elohim singular or plural debate, isn't it?
Right.
Sort of. But the Reptilians, they are not part of the Galactic Federation. They are the enemies of, and I don't know if it's Reptilians plural as a number or different types of Reptilians, but they're a different force, and they're malevolent towards us. The Federation is benevolent towards us, but maybe losing patience.
Yeah, losing patience. Now, let me just tell you about the Reptilians a little bit. Those Dracos are, just, somebody called them an abomination. They're an abomination. But with that said, I've also, there's this one woman who was, she said she was a ET and that she had was a walk-in ET. And she said that all, beings, there's good and bad in everyone. And with the Reptilians, it's the same. You may have some good ones. So, you kind of, if they're out there, you kind of hate to, poo-poo them all if there's some that are trying to do good. But that's, there's been a couple of stories of people who on Earth said they have come across them. And, they were perfectly, they seem to be interested in making a friendship from the energy they picked up. Like this one lady who said she was in, these are just stories. I don't believe everyone's lying, so I'm just going to say it. She was in a car and she was driving, I think it was from California to Nevada. And there's that strip there that's, you have to go through in the desert. It's about a 5-hour drive. I've been there. And she said there was, she had to stop her car for whatever reason, and there was someone there, and it turned out to be a reptilian, and she was in shock, and she said he was very friendly and held out his hand as if he wanted some kind of friendship. Now, this lady didn't call him a reptilian, all right? She didn't know about the reptilians. Mm-hmm. She just came across something strange, right. But I noted it. She said he looked like a human reptile, and but she wasn't scared because he seemed very friendly. And I thought, that's interesting. That's interesting. And that was the second one I had read. So could we be wrong that, there may be, you can have a race of horrible beings, but there may be a few that actually would like to be peaceful?
I mean, we could be wrong about the whole thing. The Galactic Federation could be nurturing us to be their vanguard, and they're the bad guys. They just want a 8 billion strong fighting force. Who knows?
Yeah.
We have no idea. I mean, yeah, I remember the lessons of Babylon 5. We were supposed to think the Narn were the bad lunatics. Then we learned that that they were, basically enslaved by the Centauri, who are our first friends. And, listen, I don't want to get too far into Babylon 5, but I did do a show with Matt Williams on Babylon 5, so check out that show, an hour and a half of greatness. But if anything, we don't know what we don't know. So, if your friend is that much stronger than you, are you really sure that they're your friend or they're not using you? And I think it's wise to, what they say, war game or game plan for, all contingencies. I'm not sure we have any ability to defend ourselves no matter what it is, but maybe we do.
Did you see the hearings where on the UAPs the other day, and one of the Congress people was saying, "Oh, yeah, it doesn't look like he asked the question, do you think we could defend ourselves?" And one of the guests, I forget their names. I don't think it was Brush. It was the other one. Said no, we couldn't defend ourselves to this. And the congressman said, "Oh, that's not good. That's not good." And it's not. That's why I think we have help. We would have been gone.
Yeah, no, if they wanted to evaporate us, they could have evaporated us already, just like they did to the cows. Maybe that was what they're trying to tell us with the cows. If we want to, we can do this to you. Maybe they picked an animal that's domesticated close enough to people, but also that there's so many that it really wouldn't affect our ecosystem. Anyway, I don't know. That's another spitball that just came into mind. But yeah, I see a lot of the images, and I'm sure you do too. You probably see 10 times as many as I do of UAPs, UFOs, whatever the terminology du jour is. But my view is that anything with a lot of headlights and running lights is not extraterrestrial. That's testing something, whether it's civilian, military, drone, weather. I don't know, because anyone who came from other star systems doesn't need headlights or running lights.
Well, okay, so I look at it this way. They could be at different levels. Not to say that you're wrong, okay, because I don't know anything about, all of that, the technology. But I would like to point out that all extraterrestrials are not equal.
Yeah.
All right. There's some out there that are like us that are just beginning to think about getting out in space and space travel. We're not the only new species, I think, out there on planets. And then you've got some that are, next level up, next level up, next level up. I think there is the Kardashev scale, that talked about the different levels of extraterrestrial beings. So I don't think they're all equal. And if they are able to use what I call the cosmic freeway, then they may not have to, have all of that perfect starship either, if they have learned how to use wormholes for, travel. Like, who knows? But I'm not saying you're wrong. I just wanted to point out to people because that extraterrestrials are not all equal. We've got the ones here that have been crashing, probably due to gravity waves. But we have plenty of others out there that are just sitting or that have tried to come in that didn't crash. There's some that have come in that have invited people to go aboard their ships and take a trip, and they came back and reported it. I don't think everybody's lying about this, and they didn't crash. And so maybe, all things are not equal.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. They would be, just like that there's still single cell organisms here on Earth, and then there's, if one think that we're the most complex, creature on Earth, that's fine, but, there's certainly in between us and the single cell organism and things we haven't even discovered yet in the depths of the depths, and our definition of where life can be keeps expanding. Before we get into the promotion zone, is there any other space anomalies or space mysteries that we did not touch on that, it would be sort of criminal not to let you advise us about?
You mean the moon, or just
anything we didn't talk about the moon, but anything else? Anything, any other space mystery that you And if the answer is no, that's fine too. I mean, I don't know, but there might be other mysteries out there that we haven't touched on, and we should have.
Nothing that I think that we should have. When my new book is out, perhaps we can get into it.
Cool.
It is the Earth extraterrestrial history, the Earth's galactic history and our extraterrestrial connection. Now, in that book, I am talking about, excuse me, things like inner Earth. What's in inner Earth? Are there extraterrestrials in there? Are there? I talked about the ocean. Are there extraterrestrials in the ocean? Know what's going on down there? I have some amazing stories. I talk about signs in the cosmos, too many to get into here, that may be designed for us, or at least if they're not designed for us, to help us appreciate that we're not alone in the universe. I have some information on on UFOs being seen around the sun. So I guess what I want to say is there's a lot going on. I believe that the galaxy is full of life. I think we're not being told everything. And I am trying to just collect all of this information and just put it out there so that we can all figure it out. Even if it sounds crazy and fantastical, we can talk about it. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on that maybe can come back and talk about. I was trying to figure out what else. Oh yeah, there's more space mysteries with not just the U.S. astronauts, but I get into in the new book. I talk about all of astronauts around the world that have had interesting experiences in space. Guys, they have, just to let you know that our astronauts saw weird lights on the way to the moon. They saw UFOs on the way to the moon. This is why I don't personally think it's a hoax. There's just too much documented information for it to have been. I don't think, with all of these missions that went up, they said, okay, let's just make this up and write this down and then send it out so it looks more like a hoax. They've got some really interesting tales. So I'll do a lot of cosmonauts and others, that things that happen. There's stuff going on out there, but we don't hear about it in the mainstream news. So anyway.
Well, a lot of the astronauts have gone on the record, including Buzz Aldrin, who is still alive and still says, yes, there's absolutely extraterrestrial life. Now there's astronauts from multiple countries. So
right.
And these countries are not aligned unless you actually believe it's all a hoax and it's a one world government, which I don't. I think that, that if an astronaut from China or Russia, UAE or Brazil says something, that's probably we should, listen.
Some interesting stories. I'll come back if you'll have me, and we can talk about them sometime.
Of course. So, all right. So, where can people follow you? What are the names of your first two books? Where can they buy them? And then once again, just to remind people, what's the working title of the expected book, and what do you think is the estimated time for publication and sale?
Right. So I'll start with the moon. The first book is it's kind of easy to understand, guys. It's an A to Z volume, the Encyclopedia of Moon Mysteries. I have all kinds of little tidbits and stories. Some of them I touched on this show. About the moon and things going on the surface. There's more information about structures and lights. And there's transcripts from the astronauts, what they said, what they saw, and more in our history, and the moon coming in and all of that. And you can just use it, from A to Z, look at astronauts to, the paperclip shaped structure on the moon or something, that's an easy one. It's out there. The next one is a narrative. It is the moon's galactic history, a look at the moon's extraterrestrial past and its connection to Earth. I go into a more depth there about, what's happening with the moon, and I think you'll like that. And it's kind of fun. I do reference some Star Trek things too. It's kind of fun read. The new one is like I said, the Earth's galactic history and its extraterrestrial connections. I just laid out what's in there, that kind of thing. I go back in history, from history to now, what's been going on with us and extraterrestrials. I do put in extraterrestrial races as to what we know or we think we know. And that's all we can do until we have extraterrestrials introducing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just getting on TikTok. So if anyone follows me, know that I will be putting up content and Instagram. I'm a little old fashioned. I've been all over Facebook. I'm on Facebook, Constance Victoria Briggs. I have 2 pages. The one is a personal page, and that one is not open, but there is a Constance Victoria Briggs page where you can join. You'll see it. It's got a big planet, Saturn. Saturn is in the background. I also have a Moon Mysteries page where you can go on there and see all kinds of films and information and history. And I think that, I have a website, and there you can go and, email me if you like. ConstanceVictoriaBriggs.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and of course you're invited back when when your book is ready or whenever you want. That would be amazing.
Hopefully that book will be out. It was due out in September, but it's running a little behind. So it may be Christmas time by.
Listen, makes a great Christmas gift.
It's already up on Amazon for pre-order, guys.
Oh, excellent. Well, congratulations. That's terrific. All right. So everyone, you heard, you can go to Amazon, you can pre-order the new book, and I assume that means you could purchase the old books as well, the existing. I'm going to call them old.
Yes, sorry. Yes.
It's not like, War and Peace or something. All right. Well, thank you very much, Constance Victoria Briggs, for being on the show. This is fascinating. So much interesting stuff. So much fun. So many interesting anomalies up there. And we learn more. I mean, daily, weekly, monthly, and it's never enough, but that's okay. That's sort of the human condition. So I appreciate you being on the show, and I appreciate all of you listening. Please check out her stuff. Check out the Facebook pages that she's given you and purchase her stuff. And hopefully you'll also check out our stuff. We don't have any stuff. The only stuff we have for you is to subscribe and like and give a rating and review and to share with your friends and family, because personal referrals count more than anything else. And we thank our guests once again, and we will see you again or hear from you, or you'll hear from us again next week again in the garden.
You come to